Hello, my name is David Koyzis, and I am an academic political scientist who taught at the undergraduate level for 30 years. I hold a PhD in Government and International Studies from the University of Notre Dame. I am currently an affiliated scholar with Global Scholars Canada. I am the author of three books: Political Visions and Illusions, We Answer to Another, and most recently, Citizenship Without Illusions, A Christian Guide to Political Engagement, which was published in November of last year. I first heard of Herman Dooyeweerd just over half a century ago as a second-year undergraduate university student. By that time, I had decided to change my major from music to political science, largely in response to two events that were coming to shape my life and interests, namely the Watergate scandal and the Turkish invasion of my father's native island of Cyprus, an event that made virtually all of my relatives on that side into refugees. During my studies, I followed the designated curriculum, taking courses in American government, urban politics, contemporary political thought, and so forth. But I was also unofficially following a parallel course of studies, which saw me reading material stemming from the thought of Abraham Kuyper and Herman Dooyeweerd. 50 years later, I have difficulty recalling why I found this all so remarkable. But as a cradle Christian, raised by believing parents, and baptized in a Reformed church congregation, I was taken by the insight that all of life belongs to God, and that we are called to live out our gratitude for salvation in Jesus Christ in every area of life. That simply made sense. We could not justifiably divide our endeavors into sacred and secular pursuits, as if in the latter we were somehow less dependent on God, or as if in the latter we were less responsible to live in obedience to His Word. Among the books I acquired as I pursued these studies were Dooyeweerd's In the Twilight of Western Thought, and, of course, the 4 volumes of A New Critique of Theoretical Thought. Now, no one can claim that Dooyeweerd is light reading. His somewhat dry prose would never have catapulted his books to the New York Times bestseller lists. Reading and digesting his ideas requires patience and persistence. But, even at my young age, I quickly discovered that the contents of Dooyeweerd's thought more than compensated for whatever defects one might find in his written style. Eventually, I would go on to study at Toronto's Institute for Christian Studies, and after that, I would write a dissertation on Dooyeweerd's political philosophy at the University of Notre Dame, comparing it with that of neo-Thomist philosopher Yves René Simon, whose writings on authority would have an influence on my second published book. So, what is it that makes Dooyeweerd's philosophy so compelling? For me, there are two primary elements. First, he has developed a systematic philosophy rooted in the reality that all theoretical thought has pre-theoretical and non-falsifiable religious underpinnings. Second, Dooyeweerd's philosophy in principle rejects all reductionisms. It's this second point that I want to highlight here. Although this principled anti-reductionism is not exactly peculiar to Dooyeweerd, his own contribution consists in placing this insight within the larger understanding that God's creation is not a haphazard product of chance, but an orderly cosmos subject to laws and norms given by His grace, and his effort to spell out those aspects of reality that are themselves irreducible, but, if placed in an apostate religious context, nevertheless lend a certain plausibility to the reductionist project. The persistent tendency of non-Christian, or perhaps non-theistic, theoretical thought is not only to fasten onto one or more of these modal aspects and to read the rest of creation through them, but to assume that doing so provides the key to understanding the world as a whole. Given his principled anti-reductionism, I personally have found Dooyeweerd exceedingly helpful in analyzing the political ideologies that have so heavily impacted public life in our world since at least the French Revolution. What do we make of the competition in our parliamentary bodies amongst the followers of liberalism, conservatism, nationalism, democratism, socialism, and so forth? For more than 2 centuries, Christians have been compelled to choose amongst these contenders for their political loyalties. More troubling yet, Christians have taken sides and defended these ideological visions, or perhaps illusions, against their competitors when a more measured and spiritually discerning approach would almost certainly be wiser. Each of these ideologies, in its own way, is reductionist, assuming that a particular facet of reality provides a key to the whole. Thus, liberalism, while properly valuing personal liberty, assumes that all communities can be reduced to the collective wills of the component individuals, thereby denying the distinctiveness of particular kinds of communities. Under this ideology, marriage, family, church congregations, and even the state itself become mere voluntary associations amongst contracting individuals who retain their sovereignty over them, defining their structural purposes as they see fit. Socialism, too, while correctly valuing communal ownership of productive property, neglects to recognize that this already exists in multiple overlapping forms. Its followers thus dangerously aspire to consolidate all these forms into a single all-encompassing whole, an aspiration that nearly always ends up empowering the state at the expense of the genuine pluriformity of society. Dooyeweerd's philosophy does not constitute the only theoretical defense of this pluriformity of society in the face of the distorting visions of the political ideologies. But I believe it offers the best account of the diversity in God's world and in the human society and culture which He has created us to develop and fulfill. Given the increasing polarization of especially the American, and to a lesser extent the Canadian bodies politic, I believe that Dooyeweerd's philosophy, as laid out in the third volume of his New Critique and his other writings, offers a fresh vision of reality that could serve to heal the divisions, especially within the Christian community. Two organizations have been especially influenced by Kuyper and Dooyeweerd's legacy. The first of these here in Canada is the Christian Labour Association of Canada, founded in 1952 and dedicated to being a healing presence in the workplace. Several of my own students have gone on to work for the CLAC after graduating from university. Another significant organization is the Center for Public Justice, headquartered just outside Washington, D.C. CPJ was founded in 1977, and I have been associated with it since its beginning. I now serve on its board of trustees. Its mission is to serve God by equipping citizens, developing leaders, and shaping public policy to advance justice for the transformation of public life. Given once again the increased polarization of the American body politic, CPJ's efforts, rooted in the tradition of Kuyper and Dooyeweerd, have an important role to play in bringing the light of Christ to bear in the political realm. Thank you very much.